Both Palmer amaranth and water hemp are invasive pigweed species that can be very difficult for producers to manage in their fields. University of Illinois Extension weed science specialist Dr. Hager believes that although Palmer amaranth and water hemp share similar characteristics, Palmer is what he and his research team fear more than anything. We met with Dr. Hager at the recent Palmer Amaranth Management Field Day held in Carlton, Nebraska to learn more about this pigweed species and how to manage it.
We really hadn't had a lot of experience with it before. We know Palmer has been in Illinois for years, but it simply has not really manifested itself as a driver weed species yet. And so when we found this field, we thought it would be a great opportunity to learn more about it instead of trying to base our recommendations to Illinois farmers on other states' work. We had about a 3 or 4 year duration of projects that we stayed on this field trying to look at not only what are some herbicide options that farmers could use, but also trying to measure the biology of the species. You know, how many emergence events do we typically see a year? How big does this thing get? You know, are there other environmental factors that maybe tend to either favor its growth and establishment or maybe impede it a little bit? And so it's been a really interesting weed to work with. A lot of similarities between Palmer amaranth and our driver pigweed species, which is still water hemp. But certainly, hands down, Palmer is the one that we fear more than anything, because it's a species that I think has been shown time and time again. It can literally devastate a farm in a very short period of time if people don't give it the attention and in some strange aspects, the respect that that species deserves. It's not something that you really want to ignore. I've said before, and I'll say again, you know, one of the things that really helps Palmer become established in a field or in an area is nothing more than apathy. You know, people who say, you know, that 1 or 2 scattered weeds across the field, well, they won't hurt anything, but this is a different species. It plays by its own set of rules, the way it grows, it reproduces, and affects crops, and it's not going to adapt to us, we're going to have to adapt to it.
To better understand Palmer amaranth's resistance, Dr. Hager says he looks at many aspects when considering the control of the weed.
Well, we looked at a lot of the same things that a lot of other programs look at. What are some of the effective residual herbicides? What are some of the effective post-emergence herbicides? A lot of that depends on the resistance spectrum that you may have in a population. We also looked at, you know, the idea, can we layer things, you know, 2 or 3 applications of residual herbicides to essentially try to keep it from ever coming out of the ground, because ultimately the way that we win the battle against dioecious pigweeds is not just opening up a new jug and treating the field with it. Really, the best strategy is trying to attack these populations and these species at the most vulnerable stage in their life cycle. And that's not a 1 or 2 inch tall Palmer. The vulnerability lies in the seed, and that is that the seeds do not remain viable in the seed bank indefinitely. So whatever we can do in a very integrated program to keep Palmer from producing seed for about a 2 or 3 year period is going to pay dividends for farmers for years into the future.
While Illinois does have its own strong population of Palmer amaranth, Dr. Hager says it's more significant, invasive, and widespread here in Nebraska.
Well, what we've seen here in Nebraska, I think you have areas where Palmer is a more significant problem across a higher frequency of acres than what we have in Illinois. We can find it in about a third of our 102 counties, so it's not like it's not there, because it is. But so far, we really have not had a lot of instances where it's invaded fields and farmers haven't paid enough attention to it to the point now where maybe that field becomes unfarmable, you know, for a year or 2.
Staying aware and paying attention to Palmer populations is key to keeping it under control.
Really, again, it needs to be a zero tolerance species for us. You know, the best way that we can stay in front of Palmer is to stay in front of it and not let it pass us by, because, you know, a couple years that we ignore this and the seed bank begins to build up, we've got problems for years in front of us. So keep the awareness up there. Don't overlook this. If you've got a strange looking pigweed in your field, you're not sure what it is, pull it up, get rid of it, send a sample to us. We'll be happy to identify if it is Palmer. And then we need to really make sure that we pay attention to these populations, you know, in these particular fields for years in the future.